It was just after 9 in the morning when I heard the rattle at my front door. A metallic click followed by the slow turn of a key that didn't belong to us. At first I thought maybe my wife had returned early from errands, fumbling with her copy. But then came another sound, the frustrated grunt of someone trying to force what didn't quite fit, the scraping of brass against brass. My stomach dropped because I knew that sound didn't belong to family. I moved silently down the hall, heart pounding, and peered through the side window. And there she was, HOA Karen. Her bulk hunched forward, floral blouse straining at the seams, sweat shining on her forehead as she tested a ring of shiny master keys against the lock of my home. She looked around nervously, then bent again, muttering under her breath, "One of these should work. They always work." Shock turned to rage in an instant. This wasn't a violation notice on my mailbox. This wasn't her yelling across the yard about weeds. This was her, physically trying to enter my home, as if ownership extended beyond the HOA meeting hall and straight through my front door. Before I could move, my son Daniel, 19 and home from college, came down the stairs. He saw my face, then the figure at the door, and without a word he strode past me, pulling open the door so fast Karen nearly toppled inside. She froze, eyes wide, caught in the act with the key halfway in the lock. Daniel's voice was low but thunderous. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen stammered, her cheeks blotching crimson. 2 was conducting a safety inspection. HOA regulations require periodic testing of lock compliance. "It's for your own good." Daniel barked a laugh, sharp and bitter. "You mean you were breaking in? Don't leave been caught." He pointed at the key ring in her pudgy hand, dozens of keys jangling like stolen treasures. "Where'd you get those?" Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the confrontation. Curtains twitched, doors opened, phones came up recording. Karen, who always thrived on an audience, now shrank under it, but her arrogance flared anyway. She jutted her chin, booming in her usual shrill voice, "As president of the HOA, I am entitled to access properties for compliance checks. These are authorized master keys." I stepped forward then, holding up my phone where the live feed showed her fumbling with my door moments earlier. "Authorized? You just tried 3 wrong keys before you got caught. This isn't compliance. This is trespassing." The crowd murmured, anger building. One man shouted, "She tried my door last week." Another woman gasped, "That explains the scratches on my lock." The tide was turning, years of pent-up suspicion and quiet fear now spilling out in collective fury. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to shout over them. "Don't be ridiculous. These inspections are for your safety. You should be thanking me." But her words fell flat, drowned out by the growing chorus of neighbors demanding answers. That was when Daniel delivered the lesson she would never forget. He stepped close, towering over her, his eyes blazing with the kind of calm fury that made everyone listen. "You violated our home. You violated our trust. And now everyone knows you're a liar. You've hidden behind your title for years, but titles don't make you untouchable. Actions do. And today, your actions showed exactly who you area criminal." Karen's knees wobbled. For the first time, the queen of fines, the tyrant of notices, looked like a cornered thief. She tried to speak, but no words came. Daniel reached out, plucked the key ring from her trembling hands, and held it high for everyone to see. "These keys belong to us. Every lock you tried to open without permission belongs to families you've been tormenting. And now this evidence belongs to the police." The crowd erupted in cheers, claps echoing down the street. Phones recorded, voices shouted for justice, and Karen stood frozen, her kingdom collapsing around her. And then came the twist. From the back of the gathering stepped Officer Ramirez, a neighbor who lived 3 houses down, dressed in his uniform on his way to shift. He had seen enough. His voice cut clean through the chaos. "Karen, you're under arrest for trespassing and attempted unlawful entry." The silence that followed was electric. Karen stuttered, You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president." Ramirez snapped cuffs around her wrists, his expression hard. "Exactly, and that makes this worse. You abused authority you never had." The neighbors roared in approval as Karen was led away, red-faced, sputtering protests no one believed. My son stood beside me, chest heaving, shoulders squared, and I felt a swell of pride deeper than words. He had faced down the tyrant who tried to invade our home, and he had done it with truth, strength, and clarity. The moment Officer Ramirez clicked the cuffs onto Karen's wrists, it felt like the entire block exhaled at once. For years, she had been the looming storm cloud, issuing fines for mailboxes a shade too dark, threatening lawsuits over holiday lights, and yelling at children for riding bikes on the sidewalk. But now, she stood shackled, sweating under the morning sun, caught red-handed with a jangling ring of stolen keys. The Queen had been dethroned in front of her own subjects, and no shrill proclamation of HOA authority could save her. As Ramirez read her rights, she tried every excuse, her voice wobbling between indignation and desperation. "This is a misunderstanding. Those keys are for community safety. You people don't understand the liability I carry." But every word only earned louder scoffs from the neighbors who had endured her reign. Daniel held the key ring high like a trophy, and the phones recording the scene captured both the evidence and Karen's downfall in high definition. That afternoon, the videos went viral. By nightfall, hashtags bearing her name trended locally, then nationally. News vans rolled into our street, their satellite dishes aimed toward the sky, anchors narrating in somber tones about the HOA president arrested for attempted break-in with master keys. Strangers online debated whether she had crossed into criminal impersonation of law enforcement. Former residents of our neighborhood came forward with their own stories, finds that made no sense, threats of eviction, mysterious scratches on their doors. It wasn't just our block anymore. It was a movement. Karen was released on bail 2 days later, but the damage was irreversible. She tried to walk the neighborhood like nothing had happened, but every door she passed slammed shut. Children pointed at her whispering, "That's the lady who tried to break in." People crossed the street to avoid her. For once, her power dissolved not with paperwork but with shame. The HOA board scrambled, calling an emergency meeting in the community hall. Daniel and I went, along with nearly everyone on our street. The board members sat rigid behind a folding table, papers neatly stacked, but their eyes betrayed fear. When Karen barged in demanding her seat at the head, half the room booed. A neighbor, Mr. Johnson, elderly and quiet until that day, stood and raised his voice like a preacher. "We let this woman terrorize us for too long. We thought we had no choice, but she crossed into our homes, and that cannot stand. Tonight we reclaim this association." For the first time, the board listened. Karen tried to interrupt, but shouts drowned her out. A motion to remove her as president passed unanimously, the gavel striking down like a final nail in her coffin. She stormed out red-faced, spitting curses at the crowd, but nobody followed. That might have been enough. A neighborhood freed from tyranny, but karma wasn't finished. Weeks later, a local investigative reporter uncovered that Karen had obtained her master keys by bribing a maintenance contractor who serviced locks for the subdivision. Worse, she had been entering unoccupied homes of snowbirds, rifling through belongings under the guise of inspections. The footage of her caught in my doorway became the centerpiece of the case. When police raided her garage, they found a stash of property, jewelry, electronics, even children's toys linked back to neighbors who had long suspected theft but never imagined their HOA president could be the culprit. Her arrest this time wasn't quiet. Sirens wailed, squad cars lined the street, and neighbors gathered once more to watch the woman who once lorded over them hauled away again, this time on charges of burglary, criminal trespass, and fraud. The sight of her sputtering as she was loaded into the back of the cruiser, shouting, "I did it for the community," while the whole block laughed, was surreal. It was the kind of ending you couldn't script, poetic in its justice. Through it all, Daniel never bragged, never gloated. He told anyone who asked that he had only done what anyone should when truth is on the line. But I saw what it meant. He had shown us all that fear doesn't have to rule, that even the most entrenched tyrant can be toppled when someone has the courage to stand up. Months passed, and our street felt lighter. Kids played without being scolded. Neighbors greeted each other without suspicion. The board restructured with volunteers who actually listened. And in the center of it all, my son's act remained a story told at every barbecue and block party. The lesson wasn't just for Karen, it was for all of us. A reminder that silence feeds bullies, but unity starves them. Karen, meanwhile, faced trial. She shuffled into the courthouse thinner, drained, her hair unkempt, the arrogance gone from her eyes. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on multiple counts. She wept as the sentence was read, not for remorse but for the empire she had lost. And as the gavel came down, I thought back to the moment she slipped that key into my door, and how swiftly her world had unraveled. Looking back now, I realized something powerful. Karen's greatest mistake wasn't the theft or the trespass. It was underestimating the very people she tried to control. She believed fear was stronger than truth, that a title could outweigh conscience. But truth, once revealed, is relentless. It doesn't just expose the guilty, it ignites the courage of everyone who was too afraid to speak. That night, sitting with Daniel on the porch, I told him how proud I was. He shrugged, smiling softly. I didn't do anything special. I just told the truth when it mattered. But I knew better. He had lit a fire in our community, one that burned down the walls of silence and rebuilt something stronger. Trust. So when I tell this story, I don't just tell it as a father proud of his son. I tell it as a reminder to anyone living under the shadow of a Karen, HOA or otherwise. You are not powerless. You are not voiceless. And when someone tries to cross your threshold literally or metaphorically, you have every right to say no, to expose the truth, to stand tall. What do you think? Was Karen's downfall justice served? Or do you believe there was another way this could have ended? Share your thoughts, because stories like this are only complete when we all weigh in on what's right and what's wrong.